Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program will begin in 1 minute.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to DataCon LA 2019. Thank you. Thank you for your applause. It'll wake up all our speakers, I'm sure. So I am pleased to introduce Subhash D'Souza. He's a data evangelist and the founder and organizer of DataCon LA. He also organizes the LA Big Data Users Group and the LA Apache Spark Users Group. Please join me in welcoming Subhash to the stage.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you all for attending the DataCon LA. This is the seventh year running, and it's every year it seems to be getting bigger and better. Every year has been about a theme. Typically, I usually make that theme technical and something about data. But this year I went with something different. This year was all about change and acceptance. Change because this was the first year we moved to a completely paid format, and acceptance because it was about communicating the change to ensure we are able to continue to create a better and uh, you know great experience for our attendees. Tall order, huh? It's not easy getting people to change their mind. When something you give something to people for free and then ask them to pay for something, it's a big change. But all about this was not about making all about getting people to pay. It was about having people trust the event, make it better. As we grow bigger and become better, it became important that we want to do something with more quality, uh, with a heart and minds to change how people feel about the event. But I wasn't sure if we would hit our targets, and but I'm happy to say that we not only hit our targets, we blew past them. Uh, I set a target goal of about 2,000 attendees, and I'm glad to say we had to close our registration 2 days ago because we just ran past it. So we would not be able to do this without you. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out and making this successful. So a round of applause to all of you. Thank you very much. I hope all of you have come to learn and have an enjoyable experience. 7 years is a long time, but all of this would not have been possible with some of our long-term organizers. I want to say a very loud thank you to Jason, John, Arti, Jimmy, Cal, Rich, Mark, and Sanjeev. You guys have been around a lot and have seen a great deal. Without you, none of this would have been possible. Uh, I also would like to thank our hosts, USC Marshall School MS in Business Analytics program. Our hosts have been gracious partners, Abbas and Nina, for the past 3 years, and I hope this partnership will continue in the future. For those of you who are not aware, the USC Marshall School MS in Business Analytics program is a comprehensive program that provides students with the skills and knowledge to become experts in business analytics and data sciences and to advance their careers in this exciting and fast-growing field. Now, I would like to introduce a very special guest and a keynote speaker. I'd like to introduce our chief guest for the day, LA City Controller Ron Galperin. Ron is the 19th controller of the city of Los Angeles, elected in 2013 and again in 2017. He serves as a watchdog for taxpayers at City Hall, making sure public dollars are spent efficiently and effectively. Ron launched Control Panel LA, the city's first open data portal, in 2013. It features information on assets and liabilities, employee compensation, and much more. Because of his efforts, LA has been named the #1 digital city by US City Open Data Census 3 years in a row. Government Technology magazine put Controller on its list of top 25 doers, dreamers, and drivers. In 2019, Ron received the Tyler Public Sector Excellence Award. Ron, please, we want to welcome you to DataCon LA. Round of applause for Ron.
Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to be here, and what an amazing program this is going to be. And I am pleased, as controller for the city of Los Angeles, to welcome all of you to this DataCon LA. And also, especially, I wanted to thank Subhash and DataCon LA for inviting me to be here today and to just spend a few moments with you. As controller of the second largest city in the United States, it's my job to be the taxpayer's watchdog to oversee the finances and the spending and the operations of the city of LA. Now, I will concede my title maybe is one of the most deceptive of all of the elected officials in the city, in that I do not get to control everything. I am working on it, however. And I do remember when I got elected to this job, my mother said, as only a mother can say, "Finally, a title to go with your personality." So it's my job to make sure that public dollars in Los Angeles are really being put to the best use for our residents, for our businesses, for our visitors, to keep government honest, responsive, accountable, and make sure that things work as well as they possibly can. And data is absolutely the cornerstone of all of it. I remember when I first came into office, actually, even before that, I had originally gotten a letter from my then council person explaining why my street was not going to be repaved anytime soon. And it explained how we have thousands of miles of streets in LA, and that year we were budgeted for a very small amount, and it was going to take up to 30 years, but thank you for your patience. And I wasn't very patient. And I wanted to go and learn about where our money came from. And that led me into a whole world of city data, which at the time was not really very much available. And it was my desire from the very first to put it all out there for everybody to see. And I think that that open data in and of itself does not necessarily make government better, but it is an absolute prerequisite to making that happen. So Control Panel LA, for those of you who may not have had a chance to check it out, is the definitive source for interactive data about the finances, the payroll, the revenues, the funds, performance of various departments in the city of Los Angeles. And I'm really proud of how it's available to everybody. And, you know, in the past, not a lot of people went onto a controller's website. It wasn't that exciting. But we've actually had a tremendous response to that. We've had millions of page views. We have so many Angelinos who previously were not engaging with government, really now engaging with government, and that is absolutely vital. And especially in this time, we pay so much attention to what happens in Washington, D.C., but local government, I believe, really has an ability to most intimately impact our lives. And so we have a responsibility to build those relationships and build that trust. So we've taken data and we've added dashboards, infographics, videos, interactive online tools, maps, and more. By the way, some of the maps which you might want to check out, we've mapped every single oil well that may even be in your backyard in the LA area. We mapped every single affordable housing unit that is income restricted in the city and who's responsible for it. We mapped all of the various cannabis businesses and which ones are paying their taxes and which ones aren't. We mapped a whole year's worth of parking tickets. You can go and see where you are most likely to get a ticket and what kind of ticket that is going to be so that hopefully you can avoid it. We've mapped LGBT youth resources, and also for the first time, every single property that is owned by the city. We're the largest owner of real estate. So how do we take that and leverage it for the good? And it's not just about efficiency. It is literally about saving lives, the data that we use. For example, when we had the recent catastrophic fires in Southern California and in Northern California, it was data that actually helped to put those fires out more quickly. Data that actually was able to use predictive analytics of where the spread of that fire is, given how much fuel there is on the ground, given the wind conditions, given humidity, given all of those factors. And that actually saved lives. And that has helped to make Los Angeles, I'm proud to say, a leader when it comes to data. And I love coming to these kinds of events and being part of it because we want to effectuate a data revolution in Los Angeles and in local government. And you being here is all part of taking data and improving lives for as many people as we possibly can. So with that, I will say thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I've got these handy dandy certificates from the city of Los Angeles. One which is for DataCon LA, and one which is for Subhash D'Souza, who was behind me just a second ago. And I will invite him to come back out and to say that on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, Thank you for all of your hard work and commitment to making DataCon LA possible. We look forward to many, many more years of an engaged data community of government, companies, and entrepreneurs throughout Los Angeles. Please give it up for Subhash and for DataCon LA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. Should we,
Yes.
okay, great.
Get in? Yeah, okay. Great. First them, behind the poster, out of the photo. We have one.
Everybody in yellow.
Very
Come
good.
on up.
All right. Sit here. Yes, I will. Okay. Yes.
All right.
First. Yep. She wanted in the photo? Yes. Okay.
Don't you all just love choreography? Okay. Hi. How are you? How are you? Okay.
Great. Ron, and before you go, Ron, we have a certificate of appreciation we'd like to present you with as well,
Oh, thank you so much.
and a ceremonial DataCon LA shot glass.
Wow. Which hopefully is worth less than $50, or else I have to report this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pose for a picture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, our next speaker is Abbas Sharif. Abbas is a professor of data science and the director of the MS in Business Analytics program here at USC, our host sponsor of DataCon LA. His areas of interests are statistical computing and data visualization. Please join me in welcoming Abbas to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. Here's to a third year at USC for DataCon. Previously, it was Big Data Day LA. Now it's DataCon. We're very excited to have all of you here. I see familiar faces from previous years. I also see new faces. Just quickly, in my talk today, which is going to be 2 minutes, so I'm not going to be here for a long time, mainly I want to discuss with you the importance of bridging the gap between academia and industry. And that's a very important point for us as in academia to collaborate with industry partners for the main reason is to make sure that the talents that we are creating here fit directly in the companies that you guys are working for. So in order to bridge this gap and make the distance zero between us and you guys, we have taken many steps in order to do this. And during these steps, we also want you guys to take some action to reach out as well, to reach us and meet us in the middle while we are working with you. So the first step that we took is we created the MSBA program, which is a business analytics program. Now, there's a lot of data sciences program, but we wanted to take a different aspect or different venue and make sure that on the data science, on top of the data science that we usually teach to our students, we want to have the business layer on top of it, which makes a big difference in our talents that we are creating here at USC. We want our students to be able to directly work with healthcare people, even if they didn't have the healthcare background, but we teach them healthcare analytics. We teach them entertainment analytics. We teach them marketing analytics, fraud analytics, and so on. So this is the first step that we took. The second step, and this is even more important to us, is the projects that we usually work with our industry partners. And here I can't stress on this particular point, because through this point is actually a win-win scenario for us, and it's also for you as well, most importantly for you. How is that a win-win scenario? First of all, to our students, it's actually a great way to work with real data, to work with real problems, right? Now, and on the other hand of the equation, which is you guys, we are creating this talent pipeline. Eventually, you're gonna be able to see all of the students or to work with the students even before they join your company. So that's a very important part, because getting the talent or having the talent come to you, it's becoming really hard these days and really expensive. So we want to make it easy for you. Now, the third thing that we have done, and that's the last thing I want to share with you, I talked with Subhash in the last 2-3 weeks about having, we know that academic conferences usually happen separately from practitioner conferences that we have here today. So we will have next year, starting from next year, a parallel to this particular conference where our researchers here at USC would come and interact with you in order to learn from each other. We are probably more on the theory side. You guys are all more on the practitioner side. Most importantly, you have the data, we don't have the data. So this kind of collaboration is going to create the best talents for you later on. I would like to make sure that you guys are all having great time today. Keep your smile on, keep this energy. Thank you so much, and I'll see you around. Take care.
We have a certificate for every one of our speakers.
Surprise. Surprise certificate. Thank you.
Thank you, and your shot glass.
All right, I'll make sure to drink in it.
All right, now to our first keynote industry participant. This is a real exciting one. I'm pleased to introduce Anita Sengupta. She is a rocket scientist, pilot, and now tech entrepreneur. She's a veteran of the space program. Her projects at NASA have included the Dawn Ion Propulsion System, landing the Curiosity rover, and the Cold Atom laboratory mission. After NASA, she was a senior vice president of Virgin Hyperloop and is now co-founder and corporate officer at urban air mobility company, Airspace Experience Technologies. Please join me in welcoming Anita to the stage.
Oh, is yours the clicker? Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to hear me speak. So USC is near and dear to my heart. I actually got my master's and PhD here in aerospace engineering, and I'm also a research professor in the astronautics department. So I always do enjoy coming here, and I've actually never been to this conference room in all my times here. So my talk is slightly different. It's about aircraft, but it's okay because everything requires data to be successful. And specifically, I have a company called Airspace Experience Technologies. We're based in Detroit, Michigan, and we're developing electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft for the future of urban air mobility. So for me, I'm a science fiction fanatic, to be nice about it, and I love sci-fi, and sci-fi actually motivated me to become an engineer, and it's motivated pretty much all the things that I've done in my career. And I think for a lot of people out there who are in the tech sector, whether you're a computer scientist, whether you're a software developer, whether you're an aerospace, mechanical, electrical, biomedical engineer, many of us have been motivated by science fiction. And science fiction actually allows you to make your dreams for what the world you would like to be a reality through the development of technology. And so one of the key ways that you can advance society is through the development of transportation technologies. It can be a curse, but it can also be a blessing. And so with the skills of engineering and computer science, and of course the data analytics that goes behind our business cases that we develop, we can actually build a future that we imagine, and we can turn to science fiction to look at what one of those technology options could be. So by a show of hands, how many of you have either seen or heard of the Jetsons? Obviously, it's a family of the future, and they live in very modern societies. And one of the ways in which they get around is with flying cars. And so flying cars is a misnomer. It doesn't have to be a flying car. It can also just be an aircraft with the ability to take off and land vertically. And as an aviation enthusiast, an aerospace engineer, and as a pilot myself, nothing would make me happier than to be able to design, build, and fly my own plane. And my primary hobby actually is general aviation, which is flying myself around Southern California. And as somebody who cares about flying, climate change, being able to have electric aircraft to create sustainable aviation is kind of an important thing for me as an engineer. Now, most of us, I think, live in Los Angeles. One of the biggest problems of Los Angeles is traffic. It took me an extra 20 minutes getting here this morning because I was stuck on the 10 freeway where it went from 4 lanes down to 1 lane. So the ability to go above traffic and create highways in the sky actually allows you to get around these kinds of congestion problems in distributed cities such as Los Angeles and New York and many places around the world. There, of course, is a cost impact to traffic, which means you can't get goods and service and people to the point A to point B where they want to go. And there's also a congestion aspect of traffic, which has a pollution and carbon footprint associated with it if you're using vehicles which are reliant on fossil fuels. So if you can create a way to get people above traffic and do that in a sustainable manner, you can solve several problems all at once. I shall show you a short video of what we're proposing. So our aircraft looks very similar to other types of high-wing aircraft, but it has the ability to tilt its wing. It's called a tilt-wing vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL vehicle, which means when the wing is pointed downwards, it has the ability to take off like a helicopter and land like a helicopter. But when the wing is then put horizontal towards the ground, it flies like a traditional airplane, which makes it very energy efficient. Our company is located in Detroit, Michigan. There's a very specific reason for that. Detroit is the home of the automotive sector. And so we're looking for ways to lower the cost of developing aircraft by utilizing automotive-grade technology, specifically electric vehicle technology, where it makes sense, as a lot of the development has been done there. And so what you can see is how you could go from vertiport location in a parking lot to a rooftop and back and forth as a means of traveling around the city. Or you can use existing airports that exist all over Southern California. And so to give you a little bit more detail on our aircraft, we are looking at holding a total of 4 people. Those 4 people would be passengers, sort of like an Uber ride in the sky, with a safety pilot up front. And so in order to make this type of system work, you have to be able to have on-demand servicing as opposed to showing up to an airport, waiting in line for an hour to go, right? Because you want to keep these flights to around 5 to 15 minutes. And so the way that you facilitate this kind of on-demand model is to do something that we see with the rideshare services of today, whether that's Lyft or Uber, all the new ones that are coming out. And there are companies who are working on this now from a software development perspective to make this happen. And so the data element to this, of course, is where would you want to implement these urban air mobility networks? What would be the most bang for your buck in terms of where do people travel from? And the data analytics behind that actually drives where you would see these systems first implemented. One of the challenges, of course, of private aviation is that right now, traditionally, air travel is rather expensive because the price point of the vehicle is quite expensive. That's driven by a few things. One of them is the fact that it relies on fossil fuels, which means the engines have to get basically refurbished very frequently. That's very expensive. There's also the cost associated with those fuels, which is quite expensive. And the vehicles are made only a couple hundred per year, which drives the price point up. When you take a look at a car, for example, they're very inexpensive, right? You can get a car for anywhere between $18,000 to $30,000, and they last on the order of over a decade. So you can really drive down the price of a vehicle, regardless of how complicated it is, at volumes, and if you design to low-cost manufacturing. One of the challenges people ask, though, all the time is that for an urban air mobility network, how would you handle something like air traffic control? These types of systems would fly roughly where helicopters fly, between 1,000 and 3,000 feet above the ground, which means that you want to have these vehicles eventually designed and operated autonomously. So you can schedule things in sort of a neural network type of mode when you have things going into the sky, following a particular flight plan from point A to point B. So once again, the AI aspect of that is key to developing a system which can enable high-density urban air mobility in the future. Our vehicle is designed to be more like a car in the sense that it carries 4 passengers, but it will also have a safety pilot on board until such time the FAA would approve fully autonomous air travel. And fortunately, in the automotive sector, self-driving cars and the regulatory space associated with that helps to set the groundwork for future potential autonomous aircraft travel. And since you're not going very long distances, roughly a total of 100 miles at most, but most likely most trips will be on the order of 20 miles each way, you can do electric charges roughly every 4 trips that you make. So another thing to think about when you are a passenger for something in the mobility as a service genre is that you want it to be comfortable and spacious. One of the benefits of going with an electric aircraft as opposed to a traditional internal combustion aircraft or jet engine aircraft is that electric motors produce significantly less noise. We know that, of course, when we're driving next to a Tesla or other electric vehicle. So electric aviation also produces less noise, which is important from a sort of noise pollution perspective. And of course, the view that you see up in the sky is always going to be impressive. So our company specifically is developing a tilt wing technology. Part of that is doing rapid prototyping using an agile methodology, which people use in the software space, but also using it in the aerospace space. And we've demonstrated our vehicles at subscale, 1/5 and 1/3 scale, and we have them fly, take off and land vertically, and cruise around basically the airport in Detroit where we're based. And Uber holds a summit every single year to look at companies and how they're making progress towards urban air mobility so it can eventually couple to a software platform downstream. So one of the things that we have in Southern California is an extensive network of general aviation airports. How many people in the audience here are pilots, fly for fun? Usually not that many, so you're actually not aware of how many airports there are, but this is existing infrastructure that the government already has to pay for and support. So to utilize that existing infrastructure as a means of providing a mass transportation service is actually a cost-efficient solution when you look at it from a governmental perspective. And just in the vicinity of USC, we have probably about 3 or 4 general aviation airports, which are pretty much underutilized, as is the case across the country. So one of the other things which I think intersects really nicely between the transportation sector and the software development sector is the new shift to the paradigm of mobility as a service. So instead of people owning individual vehicles, people instead purchase rides through the form of an on-demand application platform. And the same thing would apply to an urban air taxi as applies to a ground-based taxi. So to summarize, what we're doing is pushing forward the genre of sustainable, fully electric aviation, specifically the urban air mobility use case, because it's very range limited, allows the aircraft to be fully electric. Any other use case, meaning across the country, regional, transatlantic, batteries do not yet have the energy density to support it. So moving forward with this type of use case actually enables fully electric aircraft downstream. If you're interested in following what we're doing, at my company, you can certainly follow us on Twitter, and then our company Twitter account is Airspace XP. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference here.
Hang out.
Thank you.
Make sure it's the right thing. Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. I'm pleased to introduce Ani Okasian. Ani is an adjunct professor of interdisciplinary research and future studies at Woodbury University. Prior to this role, Ani led the Los Angeles-based innovation unit within OMD, the 2019 Global Media Agency of the Year, with such clients as Sony Pictures International, Warner Brothers, CBS, and Apple. In her current role, she focuses on research and development, brand strategy, and creative solutions. Please join me in welcoming Ani to the stage.
Hello, everybody. I love that I'm following a rocket scientist. No pressure. It's great. So my name is Ani Okasian, and I'm very excited to be here today. And to be honest, I'm a bit surprised to be here. You see, data, quote unquote, has been a source of contention throughout my career. Oftentimes in large organizations and corporations, data can be manipulated to justify a bad choice, to scapegoat, or to justify lack of strategy, and to use it as a security blanket to justify maintaining the status quo. A little background on me, as you just heard, I'm a professor of interdisciplinary research and future studies, and I'm also, for the last 2 years, have been running an innovation unit within OMD, a media agency that represents some massive clients like Apple and Warner and Sony and Pepsi, just to name a few. It's funny how my career turned out because my original intention was to be a war correspondent. You see, I love making sense of chaos, a temperament that served me really well in the marketing and communications industry. So much has and is changing. Today's consumers are living in a world where access is better than ownership, where peer review is more important than a credit score, and where personal relationships outweigh empty transactions. They participate in car sharing, social lending, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, co-working, house swapping, photo sharing, and even swiping for love connections. Technology is creating new mechanisms that are enabling us to trust unknown people, companies, and ideas. Trust is simultaneously a behavior, a belief, and an attitude, and even a type of confidence. Today, brand trust is consistently ranked to be the highest priority for consumers, with legacy brands receiving the lowest marks. This shift is due to a polarizing news cycle with stories that include interferences with presidential elections, Facebook privacy breaches, the News Corp phone hacking, the Volkswagen emissions scandal, the widespread abuse of the Catholic Church, or even the Panama Papers that revealed how the rich can exploit offshore tax regimes. Consumers are using their wallets and time to reward the type of behavior they would like to see from the world's biggest brands, companies, and organizations, and are vocal on their own platforms when these institutions fail them. The modern consumer is intelligent, has an opinion, and wants their uniqueness acknowledged. The world's biggest brands are spending $650 billion globally each year on marketing and advertising. $150 billion of that is spent right here in the United States, but $19 billion of that amount is complete ad fraud. And the rest is largely unnoticed, skipped over, or blocked. It's an obscene waste of resources. Despite these massive cultural shifts, agencies and big brands still continue to flatten individuals to quote unquote target demographics and simplify individual human behavior to psychographics. And, newsflash, humans are not rational. We are a complex set of conscious and subconscious drivers. And finding out what makes us tick is $1 million question. One day, I suggested we do something different. Let's go analog. How about ethnographic research? My passion. As a professor of interdisciplinary research, I look at social phenomenons and try to make sense of the chaos that is the human experience. Qualitative research can provide the structure to codify the individual behavior and help us identify cultural trends. When my colleagues were skeptical, I asked, you have all these fancy data points, and all you can tell me is that women from 18 to 45 like Pinterest, that men 35 to 50 like cars. The issue is when you identify data points, when you identify data points that you collect, you've deemed those data points to be important. So what about everything else? What about what you're not capturing? What about what you didn't think to even quantify? And when you try to understand someone through the platforms that they use, you have to realize that those platforms have large teams focused on building UX to change someone's behavior. So all that it's really telling me is that person is susceptible to have their behavior change on that platform. So it's this closed loop, right? So I set out to prove my point of how we can use ethnographic research. And I chose a project that my team was stumped on. And it was this little movie, I'm not sure if anyone's seen it, it's called Searching. And it came out of Sundance, won a lot of awards. It was an ex-Google employee who made a whole movie purely on the iPhone and the webcam, and it was about a father whose daughter goes missing, and he uses the technology to figure out what happened to her. Really visceral experience because you feel like the father's FaceTiming you or you're Skyping with them. And everybody said, how are we going to market this movie? Why would I go to a big screen to take a look at a bunch of little screens that I see every single day? So what I did was I said, I'm going to go find parents who have a daughter or a son or a child at the same age. I did background research. I figured out what the questions I wanted to ask and really take a look at what some of the hidden drivers are. And what was fascinating in all the interviews that I did, right around the same point, the parents would stop me and say, Ani, you know what? They're like, I'm already scared I'm going to screw up my kid. I really don't want to see another thing that's going to terrify me. That was the insight. And so I went to the VP of marketing of Sony and I said, we need to use this movie to prompt a solution. They had a tiny marketing budget. I said, give it to me. Let's partner with TechCrunch. Let's do a global hackathon. And let's ask, the technology was both the source of the problem, but also the solution. So we went to Rise, a big conference in Hong Kong. We announced it with the stars of the movie, the writers, the directors, and we used the entire marketing budget to give away to whoever came up with the best idea to keep minors safe online. This ended up getting all kinds of earned media, a lot of incredible clout. We had Hollywood Reporter write about it, Variety wrote about it, and so many people celebrated it. So we took a small weakness and we turned it into something much, much bigger. That's when people started to pay attention and said, maybe there is something to looking at the qualitative side of understanding audiences. Overall, though, I think marketing and communication industry will be forced to evolve with Gen Z. This is a massive paradigm shift. Gen Z is poised to be the generation that upends everything, fitting for the last letter in the generational alphabet. Gen Z is coming of age in the radical new world, born into a digital era defined by instant and ubiquitous access to information, divided and demeaning politics, and a social media-powered desire for validation, identity, belonging. Gen Z is experiencing both boundless creative possibilities as well as near epidemic levels of anxiety and stress. Like in other disruptive moments in history, Gen Z is navigating profound social, political, and environmental transformations. Over the past decade, the wealth of billionaires has risen 6 times faster than the wages of ordinary workers. More than 44 million Americans owe a collective $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. And 2014 marked the first time in 2.5 million years that the CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere moved beyond safe levels for humanity. They're entering a completely different world, and they're not necessarily the key aspects that anchor them. Marketing is based on what? Some key identifiers of demographics and looking at consumption patterns. Gen Z is changing of quite a bit. Their core identifiers are up for interpretation. With millennials at the helm, sex, gender, race, and family are now open to ongoing redefinition throughout life, from transgenderism to choosing your family to leaning into various aspects of racial identity over time. Who you are on some of the most fundamental levels are changing. We're seeing boys who are makeup tutorial stars on YouTube, like non-binary gender conformity. It's changing quite a bit. Also, another trend is the decline of mainstream pop culture, right? Media has changed considerably over their lifetimes. Long gone are the days of a handful of TV channels, magazines, and Blockbuster shaping the culture. They're actually creating most of the content that they're consuming. There's also the rise of micro communities. And that's enabling connectivity of the internet and social media with niche groups, which is really another way, another layer that they're connecting, all of which they're not necessarily connecting with mainstream media. So basically, in short, the reason why I'm here and talking to everyone is I just want to humanize data. So I'm trying to provide all this background information to say that insights come from people, and qualitative research can provide an anecdotal layer that can make sense of the chaos. Data is sometimes a little bit too black and white. It ends up being the reason that a lot of incorrect decisions are made or a lot of resources have been used incorrectly. When it comes to me, oftentimes, my job being quote unquote innovation, what I propose is everything is non-traditional. I'm taking a look at, let's do a big stunt, a custom technology integration, something that's never been done before, bigger. What can we do with this? We're oftentimes dealing with multi-millions of dollars, right? But what ends up happening is I lose out to, well, you can't quantify that. So what they like to say is, well, I lose out to Facebook ads that go unnoticed, programmatic ads, that TV spots no one's watching, radio spots that no one's taking a look at. So when you're going back into the industries that you're from, ask yourself, the data says one thing, but how can we humanize the data? How can we make sure that we're identifying the key people that we're talking about to make sure that the insights that we're getting from them help shape the strategy? Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Ani.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Quick quiz. How many of you pronounce it data? Raise your hand. And how many of you pronounce it data? There's a cool post on Hacker News recently that said that we all call it data in America because of Star Trek: The New Generation, which I think, but you know. I'm pleased to introduce Elizabeth Owen. Dr. Elizabeth Owen is the founder and chief data scientist of Learning Data Discovery, as well as an advisor and board member at Age of Learning for Educational Data Science. Her work focuses on optimizing the design of adaptive learning systems through integrated machine learning and engaging digital environments, with recent experience at Learning Games Network, Glass Lab Games, collaborating with EA and Zynga, Squirrel AI, and Google. Her prior projects also include alternative simulation-based assessment with the U.S. Department of Education, working with ETS and NAEP, as well as in big data in education advisory work with the National Science Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth to the stage.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. Happy Saturday. It's a good Saturday for data. Nice to meet you. I'm Liz. This slide pretty much says everything that he just said. So basically, my passion is using data science to support positive behavioral change in engaging digital environments and affording alternative ways to understand human behavior and growth over time, whether it's through educational assessments, engaging simulations, or other sort of immersive digital environments. So today I want to talk to you about data-driven design. So a lot of times there's the design process traditionally in environments in production, like companies at EA and Age of Learning and other large corporations who are churning out really interesting content. Recently, though, I think the challenge is implementing and integrating data science into the design process from the beginning, so that data is not an afterthought, and it's a sense of the designers and everyone is a data scientist. Everyone can participate in, hey, what's important here? What insights do we need from the data? And how do we integrate that knowledge into the whole production process? So really, it's about leveraging the power of data and empowering everyone in production and the contributors to the project to participating. So how do we do that? So we look at, and by the way, the context for this is any software or app that seeks to engage or provide behavioral change. So this applies to a broad range of things. I'm going to be discussing it in the context of a learning game, but that's just one example. Almost everything out there seeks to change our behavior or engage us in some way in the app and software world. So considering evidence and data from design inception is a big part of it. Personalization can then be built into the system. So really leveraging data science to allow adaptivity and personalization as people are involved in the digital experience. Your users want to be catered to. And so this kind of approach can help enable that. Machine learning and AI analysis, ongoing and after the fact, can then support data-driven design and iteration on design, as well as intelligent personalization. Oops, let me go back. So the outcomes here. In software, we're usually looking for better engagement, which usually means better revenue and retention, and also better success with the target behavior you're trying to elicit. So for example, in learning games, actually I'll talk about an example, but in learning games, if we want students to learn a math concept, usually this kind of approach, if more effectively, helps students learn math. This is an example of data integrated into the design process. So one project I was involved in was Words with Friends EDU, which was through Glass Lab Games on the EA campus at Redwood City. And we worked with Zynga to create Words with Friends EDU, which was a modded version of Words with Friends to support students learning vocabulary, academic vocabulary. And the top level here is that when we went to design the product, we looked at, okay, what is the focal skill or behavior we want students to learn? This can apply to any app, by the way. If you are designing an app for mindfulness, an app for weight loss, any software to elicit engagement or behavioral change. This happens to be a learning example. So we were going for phonemic awareness, vocabulary recall, and contextual word use as our learning goals. So we set that during the design. A key here is to say, okay, what am I designing for? And how do I get people to do it? So there has to be mechanics within the product that engage with those target learning objectives or behavioral goals. So for example, with phonemic awareness, one mechanic in the game was letter selection. Vocabulary recall, there's an opportunity to build academic words as part of a usual cycle in the game. And contextual word use was a mechanic we added where students could answer questions about the use of academic words in context and gain extra points. So it was both intrinsically embedded in the mechanics of the game and resulted in extra points for students as well. So in alignment with what you're trying to enforce, the focal behavior, the mechanic that elicits evidence of that focal behavior, you then get some evidence down below. So we look at data and evidence at the bottom. You have really key skills that are showing up and data in the blue dotted lines. And then to really enable data science, we don't just collect those 3 pieces of information, right? We collect everything. So everything in between, every click, every drag, every interaction, every kind of system event that we feel is important. So in this way, we are leveraging evidence-based design and data mining to enhance the design experience. So how do we structure this data? I won't go into too much detail here, but there are APIs that really help us track people's progress units throughout the simulation or app space, what the results of those units are. So for example, in a turn, in Words with Friends EDU, did I quit? Did I come up with a word that wasn't academic, or did I come up with an academic word? So what was my outcome there? And that's recorded in progress units. User action and system events. So user action is the system talking, or I'm sorry, the player or user talking to the system. Taps, drags, interactions, button presses, that sort of thing. System event is the system talking to the user. So, hey, are you still there? Do you need some help? Any kind of pop-up, video tutorial, things in which the system is talking to the player. The context, we need to know, who the player is, their ID, where they are in the game or app, and makes it meaningful. So there are ways to collect this kind of data aligned with design that really helps us. 3 key qualities of this data are that it's clearly aligned with design, so we can use it to inform iterations on design really easily. One core tenet of data science and data collection is that you want data coming out of the system in the form that you use to analyze it. So it needs to be ready to analyze as it comes out, and that's really key. I could go into a lot of back-end data science here, but suffice it to say, it needs to be ready for analysis. Hundreds of hours on the back end trying to reverse engineer better data features or meaning, or trying to glean information that you didn't originally collect it's messy and it's expensive and it's inaccurate. So that's a good principle. It's comprehensive. You collect everything that your goal is to collect, and it's consistent across the system. One example of consistency is at Age of Learning. We recently released Mastering Math, which is an adaptive game-based learning system. There are over 130 activities in the system. So as you can imagine, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel every single game and say, gosh, what should we collect here? How about this one? Oh no, I can't remember on game number 2. What did this mean? We didn't need any of that, right? That's inefficient. So we needed a clear and consistent framework to use across every game so we could track one player's trajectory across the entire learning space. So that's another utility of this kind of approach. So as the previous speaker was talking about, I think qualitative data is super important. If we look at learning analytics and educational data mining as a set of methods, one strength of this is it can take qualitative data and integrate it with quantitative data to understand more deeply learning patterns and behavior patterns. It can also help us understand hard-to-measure constructs. And there's a few categories of methods that can be applied once you have that kind of rich structured data stream that we just talked about. So 3 main categories are visualization, relationship mining, and prediction. I won't go into specifics with the methods, but there's a lot of things that you can do with the kind of structured data that comes out of the system. So here's some examples. So one of, at the top left here, there's a sense of understanding user attrition. Where do people drop out of the system? The top left is an example of Markov modeling or sequence mining to understand that. So we figured out kind of in an educational game about 8 years ago, in my work with Learning Games Network, we figured out where the drop points were happening, and we improved design and reduced the amount of attrition at those points. Let's see. Going to behavior detection and prediction at the upper right. That's a fancy, it's a fancy diagram. What we did is we really created a real-time behavior detector of when students were really stuck and needed support. So this actually took qualitative data into account and quantitative data to be able to detect in real time when students were wheel spinning and not getting anywhere versus just learning at their own pace. And it's a more complicated problem than it appears on the surface, because in the educational space, in background of learning sciences, for me, I came to understand that time on task is a terrible predictor of learning. You can't say that because someone is learning more slowly, it means they're not learning at all. I could be taking my time on something because I want to do it really well, or I could be taking my time on something because I'm completely lost, right? And so discerning when I'm lost and when I'm actually just fine is a more complicated question. So we were able to build a behavior detector for that construct and be able to detect when students are stuck and then intervene in real time when that's happening. Down here, Bayesian knowledge tracing, it's an algorithm that helps support personalization. Basically, it allows us from moment to moment to understand behavior patterns and adjust to them in the system. The last one, the heat mapping and visualization, it's a nice thing you can do with this kind of data. This is a heat map from a Learning Games Network game called Fair Play. The game was actually designed to teach graduate professors about implicit bias with gender and race, and really educating the faculty about how to avoid things like tokenism and different kinds of implicit bias that can happen in working with students of a lot of different backgrounds. So this is a map from that game, and this heat map shows where players clicked the most. The goal in doing this was to say, okay, you can see here, a lot of people tried to reach the top of the building, and a lot of people tried to dive into the water, which wasn't allowed, unfortunately. One rule of games is you never make the fail state more interesting than the win state. So we didn't have diving, unfortunately, in the game. But what we did get to see is where are people going the most here, so that we can then place the learning assets and sort of key quest givers for the learning goals in the right places so that people will organically go to them and get better learning content. So lastly, really using data science and embedding that in design, and really drawing in everyone in the production process into that integration from the beginning is a great thing to do. We brought that into practice at Age of Learning. For example, one key part of this is having interdisciplinary teams, is having methodology that allows for iteration, that's data-driven, like Agile, for example. I know everybody likes to talk about that. And at this point, the Agile has been talked about so much that there's even a backlash. But it's helpful to have iterative cycles of data-driven production. You also want everybody working together on the same team to participate in this process of identifying what is our target behavior, what are our mechanics, and what is our evidence of that target behavior, so that it's fully integrated from the beginning of the production process. This enables rich event stream data and embedded personalization, which again leads to better engagement, and on the marketing side, better retention and revenue usually. And it can also support ongoing machine learning analysis so that we can then feed that insight back into design. And so data-driven design is a cycle. So everyone's bought in. We're leveraging data science to have the most engaging, effective experience for the user or the learner. And it really is an innovative approach to production and design that looks at data from the beginning. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
I'll take that clicker.
Okay.
All right, our next speaker is our first lightning keynote. Pleased to introduce Jeff Carpenter, the Director of Developer Advocacy at DataStax, where he leverages his background in architecture, microservices, and Apache Cassandra to help developers build distributed systems that are scalable, reliable, and secure. Jeff has worked in IT in the defense and hospitality industries and is the author of the O'Reilly book, Cassandra, the Definitive Guide, 2nd edition. DataStax is a platinum sponsor of DataCon LA. Please join me in welcoming Jeff to the stage.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've been supporting this show for several years, and this is my favorite data conference, to be honest. So great to be back again this year. And I want to share with you several trends for data developers that we are tracking at DataStax, and also what we're doing in response to that to help make you awesome, help you to become a hero like you see on the slide and on my t-shirt. Okay, the first trend, data access must be easy and obvious. This is becoming more and more important as we realize that the majority of software developers have less than 5 years professional development experience. And this is true in other fields. The parallel is true in fields like data science and data engineering. So we have to make things easy and obvious. Now, from a DataStax perspective, we have long provided open source drivers in a number of development languages for talking to our core database, which is based on Apache Cassandra. We were the driving force behind the development of that open source database. It's a distributed database that scales very, very well. And on top of that, we provide an enterprise version called DataStax Enterprise, where we integrate other technologies like Apache Spark that enable analytics, and Kafka for streaming data and moving data around different places. So we've long provided those. We also have a tool that we're known for called DataStax Studio, which provides a notebook-style interface. So this is a great point of intersection for software developers, data scientists, data engineers. And one thing that we're really excited about, we'll actually have a demo out at our booth, is a tool called AppStax. This is a low-code kind of environment in which we assist you in building your data model and then auto-generate APIs for you, either REST or GraphQL APIs. This will kickstart your application development. So exciting new project. Second trend, your data needs to be accessible in every cloud where you need it. So we conducted a survey recently and found that 75% of enterprise IT organizations are pursuing either a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud strategy. Now, Cassandra is a great technology for distributing your data between clouds. It's effortless to move data between clouds, whether it's your own data centers or you're in one or more public clouds, and you want to take advantage of best-of-breed services. So that's an opportunity that's already available to you. We're also excited to be announcing the availability of Cassandra as a service coming out this year that we'll be providing on a number of the public clouds. And then we also, if you need to deploy your own clusters, obviously we want to help you out there as well. So we do provide Docker images, and we're working on a Kubernetes operator as well. The third and final trend, you need to be able to access your data using the right API or the right model. Now, I'm excited in particular about graph databases, which this visualization that you see on the left, you can produce a number of powerful queries and results, and then build powerful visualizations based on the insights that you can get from a graph database. This is an emerging area and probably doubling year over year in terms of the size of the market. We're also working toward having a one model view of your data in which you can have one copy of your data in the underlying storage and then be able to access it through a graph API like the Gremlin query language, but also access it through the Cassandra query language or through standard SQL via Spark SQL. So you need to be able to access that data with the right API. And if you're interested in anything that I've mentioned, we do have a booth outside, so come and say hello. We'll be there all day. Also, we have plenty of free training available on DataStax Academy. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a certificate for you. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
All right, I'm now pleased to introduce Joe Devon. Joe is a serial entrepreneur, including founding roles in Diamond and Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Joe has more than 20 years of development experience in high-profile projects spanning digital media, search engines, performance management for internet backbone providers, investment banks, telcos, big pharma, and big media. In addition to starting several companies, Joe serves or has served on the boards of leading development industry conferences, Cross Campus, LAX Chamber of Commerce, and Empower Tech. Please join me in welcoming Joe to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a pretty nice crowd for the morning. Today, I'm going to be speaking about data science and people with disabilities. This is a picture of the Capitol Crawl, which is an event where about several hundred disability advocates drove all the way up to Washington, D.C., and paraplegics got out of their wheelchairs, climbed the 81 steps to the Capitol building in order to protest the fact that Congress had not yet voted on the Americans with Disabilities Act. And as a result of this, they did pass eventually the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, in 1990. It ushered in an era where ramps and handicap parking would now become ubiquitous in government buildings and public spaces, which was long overdue, very late, unfortunately, but it finally made people realize how important it is for people with disabilities to have access to public services. Unfortunately, 1990 was a little bit early for the web, which became so important in our day-to-day lives that the laws were not quite there. And this is what kind of ushered me into this journey into the world of disabilities. This is a picture of my dad when he was visiting NASA JPL. My dad was a brilliant man. He spoke 10 languages, survived the concentration camps. As he used to say, he graduated the universities of Auschwitz and Dachau. And it was so painful to watch him as he was getting older because he started to lose his vision, he started to lose his hearing, and when you're older, you may not consider that a disability. You're not going to consider yourself blind or hard of hearing or low vision, but the reality is that you are. And For my dad, something as simple as going to a bank was an all-day ordeal. The web should have solved the problem for him. And he had gotten phished in the past, and he got an email from the bank stating that he needed to log in. He tried to log in, but the contrast was very difficult for him to see, so he was unable to bank, which to me, I started to see it as a civil right. And I got really upset, and so I wrote this blog post in 2011 proposing that we create a global accessibility awareness day, which would be something geared at designers and developers to make sure that we create digital products in a fashion that it would be accessible to people with disabilities. I thought if we worked really, really hard, we might be able to create something. This is the logo. I figured maybe we'll have a bit of a success. It took off right away, but unfortunately, by the second year, my father passed away. And yet, by the third year, something happened that would put chills down my spine, and this would happen over and over again with different events that came about as a result of GAD, as we call the day. Year 3, the very bank who I never mentioned publicly that prompted the blog post sent us an email saying that they're doing an internal event in order to make their own people more aware of building things accessibly. And I've never had that kind of impact on an organization from the inside within 3 years to see that this reached people was quite an amazing thing to see. Here's another example of what happened. Here you have Stevie Wonder giving a concert at the Apple campus. This was again on the day. We now have a reach of 195 million Twitter users. The big tech companies do celebrate it on the day. Here you have Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who is responsible for the entire industry that we're talking about here because he invented the World Wide Web. He felt that paying attention to people with disabilities is important enough that he keynoted an event in Copenhagen. Here you have Microsoft changing their homepage for the day, as do the other major tech companies, and their CEOs tweeted out. And it was kind of mind-boggling how a blog post on mysqltalk.com, which maybe had 10 users ever, now reaches so many people. And yet the reason for it actually makes sense when you look at the numbers. 61 million Americans, 1 in 4 people have some kind of disability. You're talking about 1 billion worldwide. And it's not just about the 1 in 4, but if you have a family member, a loved one, or a friend that has a disability and they are unable to access technology, you care about it in a different way, and you really want to see them have the ability to use technology. Unfortunately, as much as the day has taken off, big problem is that the web is not accessible. Digital products are not accessible. There's a company, a nonprofit, WebAIM, that took the 100 million top homepages, and we're only talking about the homepage, and found that 98% of them had some kind of major area according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is the guidelines you have to follow. And it's not only that, but about 60 errors per page. When you are, let's say, blind, you have what's called a screen reader. Has anybody heard of a screen reader? So we have a good chunk, but a lot of you don't. If you're blind, you cannot use a mouse. You cannot, how are you going to read the page? You have an audible, like an Alexa-style voice that speaks the page to you. And so having one error on the page might have one smaller impact, but if you have 60 errors, it means that it's really unusable. And I mentioned earlier that I viewed accessibility as a civil right. And the reason it's a civil right, and this is why I think we're not paying attention to people with disabilities, because we're not putting ourselves in their shoes. So just imagine if somebody is in a wheelchair or blind or deaf, they might have a programming job making $100,000 a year. Do you think the IRS should charge taxes or ask for taxes from this group of people? I think they should. I think that's fair. They're making $100,000 a year. They should also be taxed. However, what happens if you're in a wheelchair and you go to the IRS building and you can't get in because there's no ramp for you? You're asking for something that's unfair because you have to give them the ability to pay their taxes. And in fact, I've given similar talks to today before, and just 2 weeks ago, I read in the news that a woman is suing the IRS, who is blind, because they fined her $25,000 for paying her taxes late. But guess what? They sent her the letter in regular format. She can't read. She's blind. So how can she be given this $25,000 fine? And that's what makes it a civil right. And attorneys have noticed, because there are statutes in certain states like California, New York, and Florida, where if a defendant loses a lawsuit, they have to pay the plaintiff's fees. And unfortunately, there are unscrupulous attorneys out there who are doing these drive-by lawsuits where they prop up somebody that has a disability and they just try and get a settlement instead of trying to get the websites to be more accessible. And this is growing like crazy. So there's a business case for making your products accessible, because you are very likely to get sued. This has really grown exponentially recently. Now, most of you here are involved in data science, and I'm sure by now you've read these stories of people where there's a gender bias or people of color have a bias. Not too many people are talking about folks with disabilities, and it's been constant in this particular space that we're a day late and a dollar short. And the message that I want to leave with you is that diversity and inclusion are having a moment right now. However, you cannot have diversity and inclusion if you exclude people with disabilities. So please, today, as you're listening to the various talks on data science, don't forget to design your digital products with accessibility in mind. Thank you.
A certificate.
Thank you.
Shot glass.
Awesome. Cheers.
All right, we have a special treat for our next speaker. Pleased to introduce Kayla Banks. She's a 17-year-old programmer, web designer, entrepreneur, and international speaker. I'm just going to pause right there. Maybe I'm going to repeat that one. 17-year-old programmer, web designer, entrepreneur, and international speaker. She started programming at 9 and has been traveling the world speaking on being a young girl in tech. Since then, she's been recognized by the mayor of Los Angeles, presented in 2016 at the White House as an example of great things our youth are doing with technology. Coming from a tech family, she loves and embraces many forms of technology without letting it get in the way of just having fun being a kid. Please join me in welcoming Kayla on the stage.
Hello, everybody. So thank you for that great introduction. But like you said earlier, my name is Kayla Banks, and today I'll be telling you about the future of big data and why everyone should care. So a little background about me. Like I said earlier, my name is Kayla. I'm 17 years old. I'm an international speaker, a coder, an entrepreneur, a coding instructor, aspiring college student. And I live in Los Angeles, and I'm also a member of Biggs Family Tech, which is our family business that works for empowering and teaching kids unconventional but necessary skills such as business, monetization, coding, 3D design, and others. So this is my introduction to big data. And so in this picture, you can see like the hardware side of things, but I also worked in the software side of things. So like they said earlier, when I was 9 years old, I made my first website. And also I just did that by Googling it. And so I made my first website at 9 years old, and it was really for a school project. So we had to make a project based on whatever topic you wanted to do. And I wanted to do a website on animals. And so I spent a few days making a website about animals and their type, their species, and basically just a comprehensive kind of website about all different types of animals. And the deeper and deeper I got into it, I learned that there's more components I can add onto my website, If I add some PHP snippets, I can make it so that I can have a login and a password. So this is what I did. I added a functionality so that users could log in and onto my website. And so I did this by utilizing MySQL, which is a database server, and Apache, which is the web server. And also one of our former speakers I heard was from Apache. And I basically utilized it. So this is my introduction to big data. So now to the juicy stuff. What's the problem with big data? So I've been researching what I was going to say for this talk for a few months. But last week, I came across an article that said how colleges are using big data to steer their students in the right direction. And I was like, this article, I hit the jackpot. This is the perfect article to talk about. So as I was reading through the article, it basically said that colleges like Georgia State University are hiring big data companies to analyze how their students are, using information from students in the same major compared to how this student is doing. And they'll raise yellow flags or red flags depending on how accurate they are. And I was like, this is a very cool idea. As I get into it, I learned that the main factor that they use to keep the students on track is grades. And this is a very rudimentary element. We've been using grades since the dawn of time. We could have solved this problem by using holistic review. And I'll talk about this more later, but holistic review is a term that's pretty common in the college admissions process. And basically, big data companies aren't utilizing holistic review. They aren't using the various amounts of data that they have at hand to see their consumers from a broad range of different topics. A few years ago, in 2015, I did a talk called Undefinable Me at OSCON. And basically, this talk was basically how I have a lot of different attributes that don't fit into one category. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the high school tables. There's like the jocks and the nerds, athletics. Thing about me is I'm a varsity athlete, but I'm also a coder, and there's just a lot of things that I can't fit under one label. Well, that was the whole point of my talk, and yet we still have big data companies trying to fit everybody under one guise. And so that's the problem with big data. We want to view our consumers holistically. In this next example, you guys will see a snapshot of my very teenage bedroom. So my bedroom, you can see, tells a lot about me. You can see on the wall, it says Kayla, and there's like a whole bunch of different stuff stuck to the wall. You have my TV, which if you see closer, I'm watching a Sims 4 Let's Play. A quote, you have these pineapples and some kind of sign at the top, some random banners, and a list of goals, I think that is. I don't know. But big data is similar to what this big picture is. We try to view our consumers as one big box, but a snapshot isn't enough. Let's go ahead and dive deeper into this picture. So you see, we have a quote that says, love, which you can find in any teenage girl's bedroom, but that's how I identify with. And then you have the pineapples, which are actually an inside joke, because when I wear my hair on the top of my head, people say I look like a pineapple. And then you have my board that says Kayla. And if you look closer, you can see different aspects. You have my boarding passes whenever I travel, my astrological sign, which is Capricorn, my notice of filming, a Rosie the Riveter picture, but that's edited to say Kayla can do it instead, my volunteer badge, and just various pictures. On the left, we have my colleges that I want to go to and my goals. Some of the colleges being Berkeley, Baylor, and also USC, if anyone wants to help me get inside. And then you have some of my goals like run the 100-meter dash in under 12 seconds, learn every flag, score a high on the SAT. And so what we can learn from my bedroom is that we had the same amount of information as we did in the last slide, but we extracted this information and we made use and we valued the information at a higher rate. So now you can learn that from these pictures, you can learn that I got a big old pineapple head. I want to go to USC or Berkeley or Baylor. You can see that I like running track, which is why I want to run the 100-meter. I want to learn every flag, so I'm really passionate about geography. You can learn that I live in a city where I would have to have a notice on my door that says notice of filming. There's a lot of information that you can learn from my bedroom. So like I said earlier, holistic review is how we can change the big data field. So holistic review is mission-aligned admissions or selection processes that consider a broad range of factors, experiences, attributes, and academic metrics when reviewing applications. So what's the solution? How can we fix this problem? And it's not the first thing that popped into your head. No, we're not going to go and get more data. Instead of going out and getting more data, which since we already have a pretty big amount, hence big data, if we went and got more, that would probably be through invasive methods. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the data that we already have and we're going to make value of it. Just like how we did with my room, we look deeper and we can see our consumer in a better light. Instead of just saying, okay, you fill out your name, your address, you can find out more. I live in this specific neighborhood of Los Angeles. What can I say about this neighborhood? Are there different socioeconomic backgrounds, education levels? There's a lot of information that you can grab from big data. So I want to show you guys an example of big data's use holistically. So this here is the SAT Adversity Index, which will be introduced in 2020. So the SAT Adversity Index is a separate score that's attached to your SAT score, which shows not only your disadvantage level, but other factors. So as you can see in the SAT Adversity score, there's things like crime rate, schools crime rate, socioeconomic level, parents' education level, median house income. And they use this to help colleges better understand their students. But the thing that SAT did is they didn't go out and get more information. They used the same information that we provide for them when we sign up. And the SAT process has been the same for at least 5 to 10 years. This is an example of what we can learn from the SAT Adversity Index. Let's use our information that we already have and make use of it. And with that, I want to say that a snapshot isn't good enough. Let's go forward and look at our consumers holistically, like a college admissions process would. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. I have a certificate for you. No, not that one. There we go. Kayla.
Thank you.
Should I give the 17-year-old a shot glass? It's a water glass. It's for tonic.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I'm pleased to introduce Mukund Kaushik. Mukund leads the Digital Accelerator for Southern California Edison, where his team is responsible for leveraging digital technologies such as cloud computing and AI, and digital methods such as agile development and design thinking to deliver business outcomes that reduce risk, drive customer satisfaction, and improve operational efficiency. Southern California Edison is a platinum sponsor of DataCon LA. Please join me in welcoming Mukund to the stage.
It's great to be here today. Thanks for spending your time on Saturday to spend with the community around data. This is my first time to DataCon, and I would like to thank Subhash and everybody else for organizing such a wonderful event where we get a lot of the data, all of the people interested in data in one location. So we are Southern California Edison, and my talk to you is about how to look at SCE as a potential career for budding data scientists, because we have real-world problems to solve. Most of you who live in the LA region are customers of Southern California Edison, and we have a fairly large territory to cover, around 50,000 miles. We have about 15 million consumers to whom we deliver reliable and safe energy, and we do this through a large infrastructure, around 1.4 million poles, around 750 transformers, and a lot of substations that deliver electricity to the region. We also track trees, which is a fun fact I did not know, because trees that run parallel to our grid lines sometimes cause disruption to the power that we give to our consumers. So we track around 1.1 million trees through our grid lines. So we generate a lot of data. And what we want to do at SCE is to leverage data to solve our priorities, which is really around providing consumers with clean, safe, reliable power. And this entire infrastructure is maintained by a set of crews that we also want to keep safe. Maintaining a grid infrastructure is a very dangerous job. And so we want to use data and analytics to not only provide clean, interrupted power to our consumers, but also provide safety to the crews who we want to be safe, who we want to be safe, and so they can go home to their family and friends. So if you're interested in solving real-world problems with data, and you want to look at a career at SCE, there's another talk that we're doing at 2 o'clock where we'll talk a little bit more about some of the use cases that we've enabled with data and some of the problems that we still have to solve with data. And we also have a booth at the campus, so you can come and meet our talent team on campus, as well as you can go visit our website to find out what we are doing and what kind of talent we need to come join the SCE team. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so you might have all noticed, I see some people exiting the room. We are running late. I've advised all of the sessions to start late also, so you don't need to leave the keynotes unless you wish to get to your next room. We're going to push it back all. And also make sure to stay for a couple of announcements that I have to give after our last couple of talks. So we basically have two more. We have one more 10-minute talk and one more 2-minute talk. For our next talk, I'm pleased to introduce Sid Mohasab. Sid is a serial entrepreneur, venture investor, data science professor, author, and speaker. He has founded and built global companies many times over and has advised hundreds of organizations from hypergrowth startups to Fortune 500s. Please join me in welcoming Sid to the stage.
Thank you. Hello, warriors. So I want to talk to you today about a battle between tradition and innovation. And I want to talk about who's winning. This is not a new battle. It's a battle between progress and sameness. It's a battle between those who want more and those who are okay with the same thing, okay with the status quo. This hasn't been a battle that started recently. It's been around for a while. But the fact of the matter is that some companies are now facing a death and life situation because of this battle. It's a battle for relevance. It's a battle for relevance. That is, you will stay relevant and you will win. When you stay relevant, you will win. And that means that you have to refresh all the time, renew, rebuild. And refreshing isn't just an easy thing to do. It requires a lot of dedication. It requires you to think of new plans. It requires to be open. It requires to be able to pivot on plans. It requires you to change. And this battle is being won by some warriors. These warriors are who I call entrepreneur technologists. They're brave enough to think of new ideas, of trying to accomplish those ideas, of putting force behind it. In that sense, they're risk takers and entrepreneurs. But they use the platform of technology to accomplish what they're accomplishing, the innovation. And from that perspective, they're technologists. You may see these names or pictures. You can imagine, what would the life be without Google? How would our life be without Amazon? If you're in China, how would it be without Tencent and over 800 million people on their social media platform, or without Alibaba? How would the industry of the car industry be without Tesla? The music industry without Spotify? How about entertainment without Netflix? These people, these warriors, have created great companies. But there are hundreds of thousands of people that are also entrepreneur technologists. And some of them, many of them, are in this room. The accomplishments, the innovations that these people whom we see their faces and we know their faces have made would not have been possible without the army of entrepreneur technologists, people like you. So this army, these warriors, have some things in common. One is that they believe that we are in a process of an evolution. They believe that they should partner with the machine, that they believe that we should augment our intelligence with artificial intelligence. These warriors have a couple of things in common. They have many great qualities, but a couple of things in common. One is they have courage. The courage to challenge the status quo. The courage to find new value. And then the courage to act on it. Second is they seek the power of comprehension. Comprehension from data. Comprehension from everything that is around them. Big data or small data. They seek comprehension, insight, because that would fuel the decisions that they would make. That would allow them to refresh. They seek comprehension and courage. But those people that I showed you, these great companies, would not have been able to do anything without the rest of the army. And it's an army that allows us to get the basic ingredient for comprehension: data. This is an army that includes the machine masters. The machine masters who connect up the hardwares. They allow us to expand. They allow us to stay connected. It's an army of cloud surfers who allow us to be accessing much, much more processing power, allow us to expand and scale. It's an army of data wranglers who take raw material and make it trustable, make it clean, make it accessible. An army of data scientists who actually are responsible for the last mile before it's translated to value. They are the ones who build the models and predict the activities and have to deal with the probabilities. And then there are the translators. They are truly the connectors between business and technology. They are the ones responsible for the entire process. Now, this is the army that is required by any one of those guys to be able to do what they want to do, which is to win and to stay relevant. Now, you're going to leave in a few minutes, and I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. Your mission, our mission, is to stay relevant. That is how we overcome, become victorious in this battle between innovation and tradition. So I want you to remember to stay relevant. And I don't want you to forget to have the courage to refresh. It is not an easy task. It requires constant remembering that we need more. We should seek more. We should want more. And we can get more because we deserve more. And lastly, to remember that the biggest weapon that you have at your disposal is comprehension. Comprehension of data, access to insight, delivery of what really drives the rest of the innovation. So I'm asking you to remember these things. I'm asking you, as you go through the sessions today, as you go from session to session, and you see all these great minds presenting you with great case studies of what they do, remember, your mission is to stay relevant. And I want you to carry that message and tell the other folks who are not here to remember the same. And I guarantee you one thing, if we all do that, we, the army of entrepreneur technologists, who are able to take the risk, who are willing and able and have the courage to ask for more. We, the army of technologies, entrepreneur technologies, will overcome the battle of innovation and tradition. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Thank you so much.
Take that clicker.
If Kaylin isn't using the shot glass, I'll use it. Okay.
Okay. One more talk, and then some announcements, so make sure to stay for those. I'm pleased to introduce Elliot Brooke, a senior executive with Accenture's Applied Intelligence practice. Elliot has architected 20-plus complex analytic transformations for the world's largest organizations, including Nestle, Miller Coors, Johnson & Johnson, Cardinal Health, Warner Media, and State Farm. Accenture is a platinum sponsor of DataCon LA. Please join me in welcoming Elliot to the stage.
Hey everyone, my name is Elliot Brooke and I'm a managing director at Accenture. I lead our applied intelligence practice here in Southern California. And on behalf of our company, we're absolutely ecstatic to sponsor this event for the second year in a row. Now, for those of you who don't know about Accenture, we are the largest consulting firm in the world with over 480,000 employees across 120 countries. And we represent 92 of the world's 100 largest companies. Now, our vision is to improve the way that we work and live through relentless innovation. and our most important assets are our people. That's why we spend over $900 million in their learning and development each year. But that's not all, right? We use technology at the intersect of data and analytics to solve some of the world's most complex business and societal problems. Now, we do this responsibly, inclusively, and sustainably. And so today I could talk to you about hundreds of inspiring stories, but I really chose 4 that mean most to me. This first one is in partnership with a non-for-profit called XPRIZE. And what we did is we developed a solution that reduces fraud in fisheries. And so how we did that is we used live video feeds from these fishing vessels in conjunction with image recognition software and analytics to, 1, identify the type of fish that are caught, 2, to count that catch, and 3, to estimate the weight of that catch. Now, what that does is it allows government entities to monitor real-time quotas in fishing. And on top of that, what we did is we used blockchain technology to make sure that we accurately trace the catch from ocean to plate. The second example is in conjunction with Indonesian and Canadian forestry companies, and we used unmanned aerial vehicles to survey large arrays of forest, right? And we did that. We used the data there to do 3 things. 1 is identify the forest health overall. 2, pinpoint areas of illegal logging. And 3, be able to forecast areas of that forest that are more prone to forest fires, right? Which is very relevant here in LA. This is one that's really interesting. Here we teamed with the UK's National Theatre, and we used live captions overlaid on smart augmented reality glasses to help improve the experience of deaf and hard of hearing theater goers. And then finally, this is something that we're pretty excited about. We're looking forward to working with LA County and the University of Southern California's Geospatial Engineering program. And here we're trying to help first responders respond to emergencies quicker, right? Without any specific location data. So that's it, very quick. Again, my name is Elliot Brook, and I'm ecstatic to be here and start to collaborate with all of you awesome folks to solve for societal problems with data. Thank you.
Last but not least.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Cheers.
Okay. Thank you all for sticking around for the keynotes. So let me give you a couple of important announcements. If some of you arrived here early in the morning and parked in the Royal structure by entering through the exit and did not pay for parking, be advised that they are going to start citing cars at 12 p.m. So if you need to pay for your parking, go back to one of the parking booths at McClintock or at McCarthy, which are sort of kind of an L shape from where the Royal parking structure is. You can pay the person at the booth and then bring your receipt to your dashboard of your car. Secondly, I wanted to give you just a word about lunch. In order to expedite lunch this year, we've made it so there's going to be divide and conquer from 4 corners of the park across from Bovard. But we've also divided it into meat and veggie and sponsor lines. So on the left, if you're looking at the park coming out of Bovard, on your left are the meat lines, and the back right is the veggie, and then the front right are the sponsor and speaker lines. At some point during lunch, it might be the case that if the lines get long, the sponsor and speaker line opens up. We've done that in the past, not sure if it will happen or not. So best thing to do is to try to get to lunch early and get to one of the corners of the park and line up for meat or veggie, depending on your dietary preference. Thank you all for staying so long for our keynotes. I was Jason Brancazio, and have a great rest of your day.